Hello and welcome once again. Thank you for joining me. If you're new, and I'm happy to see you again if you're returning. If you're new to these talks on this channel, I try to speak in plain English, not using too many terms or technical jargon, so to speak, associated with the practice of Buddhism. Occasionally there are words in the Pali language, which is the language of our Buddhist scriptures, the Pali canon, that are commonly used to describe aspects of our practice, such as sila, which means moral virtue, samadhi, which means meditation, and panya, which means wisdom. And a very common word we use is dukkha, which refers to, often is translated as suffering, but refers to the general unsatisfactoriness of things. And our teacher, the Buddha, taught that all conditioned things are anicca, that is a Pali word meaning impermanent, dukkha, suffering, or anatta, a Pali word meaning not self, but can be also thought of as out of our control. So I think even if you're very new to Buddhism, you can appreciate that first noble truth right there and then. Because of course it is evident, we can see experientially for ourselves that all conditioned things, whether they be temporary, a cream bun or a cup of coffee, or indeed something that's been established and present and there long before we came to this lifetime, and will be there long after we depart, like a range of mountains, the Himalayas or the Alps. Albeit all these things are impermanent. They weren't always there, and they will not always be there. With the more mundane, day-to-day material things, like the cream bun or the cup of coffee, these are very visible depictions of the Dharma. The Dharma being the teachings of the Buddha. The establishment of what we refer to as right view, knowing exactly this, that all conditioned things are impermanent. If we thought by purchasing a cream bun it would be everlasting happiness, bring us everlasting contentment, we would clearly be wrong. So we don't have that view. It would be wrong view. But it's right view to know it will just bring us some temporary pleasure, albeit of a very mundane nature, as with the cup of coffee. But we must apply that to all conditioned things. Ourselves are included in that, this personality, this person. We're born, but we will age, we will get sick, we will die. So this very lifetime is a conditioned thing and subject to anicca, dukkha, anatta. Moving on with the comments and the questions, I never get bored of them. It's always a delight to receive your comments, both positive and negative, and they are useful to help me direct the content of what I talk about towards subject matter that is of interest to you, but related to that Dharma, the teachings of Buddhism, the Buddha, our teacher. All of our daily activities in life, however, are applicable to that. Dharma can also be described and thought of as nature, and we live in nature, whether it be even in city life, in built-up areas. It isn't built within cities are growing up, conurbations are growing up around smaller villages become towns, become cities, and so on. But essentially it is all coming out of what there was originally, which is nature, nothing, or not nothingness, but a natural environment. All things within that natural environment, when built up, even manifesting into skyscraper buildings of steel and concrete and glass, are essentially, much like us, made of just four basic things, four elements that create all conditioned things. Those elements are of a solid nature. We usually refer to these elements of earth, water, wind, fire. It's the commonly understood description of the elements. But applying them to all conditioned things and really bringing them into the reality of our existence, we can think of them more accurately as solidity. So this solid concrete floor that I'm sitting on is very solid. If you break it down into its real basic components within it, there are other aspects of the other elements to make the one conditioned, brought together thing. So we have solidity, we have liquidity, we have air, wind, so the movement within that, and then we have the temperature of that, this relating to fire, which determines a substance's state. So for instance, water can be solid, it can be liquid, it can be gas at various temperatures. So they're all interdependent. So even within our city environment, nature is there. Everything is made of something else. It's all just one. And most and all, actually all conditioned things contain considerably more than any one thing, and that is space. Because within any atom, molecule, however you break it down to its smallest component, and I'm not a physicist, but you can do that yourselves or look it up, you will see that largely the majority component there, ingredient there, is space. Because all things, all conditioned things require space to be, just to be there. So everything is Dharma. On to the first question. Do you eat coconuts often? Do you get them with your arms? Now, not with my arms as in these, arms as in ALMS, and arms round Pindapata is when I go each day into the village to collect food. I just eat once a day as a Buddhist monk, so to do that I have to go wandering into the village in the morning with my bowl. It's not there, it's outside in the sun, having just been washed up, having just finished my one meal for the day. It's about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock or something now. That is it. I won't eat again until tomorrow when I go on Pindapata again. It's about a 3.5 kilometre walk, and these days I'm very fortunate that I get a lift back most days with a local tuk-tuk driver. Do I get offered coconuts? Well, being that coconuts is part of the staple ingredient diet or diet of the Sri Lankan people, this country here, because it's in abundance, I think most of the foods contain some element of coconut. It's there in everything. So yes, I do. I'm offered sometimes on Pindapata a coconut to just drink from, if it's already prepared and opened, and you can drink the juice, the coconut water. They refer to as milk, don't they? But these are very commonly available things. But really, in answer to your question, we eat anything that we're offered. We're not choosy. So whatever goes into our bowl, we can offer to others, the surplus, or not eat what we choose not to. For instance, I choose not to eat meat. I'm a vegetarian by choice. We don't have to be as Buddhist monks. But I usually have more than enough, so what I don't eat I share with others. But yeah, most things do contain coconut. Okay. Someone is asking, when staying in samadhi, a painful right leg and numbness limit the time to be in samadhi. Would like some advice about this, about exercises and yoga and things like that. So, I mean, the first thing to do, I mean, if you're in samadhi, you probably wouldn't notice this. So samadhi is a deeply absorbed state of meditation whereby all distractions of the body and mind you are secluded from. Although we use samadhi to just generally refer to meditation. So when you're sitting, you're prevented from getting deeply absorbed into the jhanas, the stages of meditation where you are secluded from feelings of the body and thoughts of the mind, distractions, because you have an uncomfortable body. Now this is representing and showing you dukkha. It is showing you suffering of this body. And this is to be noted and understood. Now, in a practical sense, firstly, you should be wearing loose clothing, not tight trousers or underwear. I'm wearing a loose skirt, and that is all, not a skirt. It's not really called that, but for want of a better word, it's just a piece of material wrapped around my waist, as well as this upper robe. So there's nothing pinching in. I've got very loose clothing, so you could wear some joggers or a tracksuit, something like you'd go to the gym with, not your tight jeans or something like this. I often see meditators come in and they can hardly sit down because of what they're wearing. So that's the first point. Secondly, you must question your posture. You can meditate either sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. Now, preferably, to reach levels of absorption, you need to be sitting. But you can sit in a chair. Now, if you're from the West, you're probably more used to sitting in a chair. But either sit on a stool, a backless chair, or if it has a back, as long as it's got a level seat, no tipping back, tipping forward, left or right, a flat seat, no cushion, just sit on a chair with your knees at right angles and calves straight down to the floor, so your heels in line with your knees and your feet pointing straight forward. Just sit upright with your hands in your lap. The posture we're looking to have, ideally, if it's possible, but just move towards, if it's not possible, to get close to, is to have our ears in line with our shoulders in line with our elbows in line with our hips. And then to do that, we just have to have our hands, right hand resting on our left palm and our thumbs gently touching. Now, I'm sitting in the half lotus position now, which means my right foot is on my left thigh, but it doesn't have to be. You can sit any way that is comfortable. This, however, is a way that prevents numbness, tingling, cutting off the blood supply, basically. If you're cutting off the blood supply, it's because of your posture. So any amount of exercises and things outside of meditation won't help that, but what will help it is exercises and things outside of meditation which are practicing sitting in the meditation posture. So if you have the opportunity, when you're reading or watching the television, just sit on the floor in something getting towards the half lotus position, rather than sitting in a big comfortable chair or lazing around on the sofa. And this means that outside of your meditation time, you are gently stretching the joints and the muscles to enable you to sit comfortably in the lotus position. But don't let this get in the way of your meditation. If you just need to sit on a chair, sit on a chair. Not with arms, not leaning to the right or leaning to the left, just upright, not leaning anywhere, with your back straight. And that is enough. Once you can get into samadhi, then you can go into any posture with a better degree of comfort, because you know that it won't be causing you any distraction once you can be absorbed into jhanas. Yes, so Rosie's come to see me. It's very nice. You like meditating. Rosie can remain in the same posture for probably longer than I can. I normally have to move before she wants to. She would rather you just meditate 24 hours a day, I think. Okay, is Mahavira, the founder of Jainism, similar to Buddha? So I've been to some Jain temples and met Jains and Jain monks. I don't know much about the biography or the story of Mahavira, anyway, the founder of Jainism. So I don't know the answer to that question. But Jainism precedes Buddhism, and it's often, well, I think of it, let's say, as a rather extreme form of Buddhism. If you think what I do is extreme, then that really is extreme. It's harmlessness to the nth degree. It's a more ascetic, austere life. But there are some religious aspects of worship and belief incorporated within it that I don't know anything about or understand. So I would say in that sense that Buddhism is quite a departure from Jainism and came later than Jainism. Jainism predates Buddhism by a long, long time, as do many Indian religions and philosophies. And this is where the cat would normally sit for meditation, on my right thigh, which is somehow she knows because my foot is on this thigh, so she was obviously tried and tested, or she instinctively knows from previous lives that you should only sit this side if you're going to sit on a monk's lap at all. It's more comfortable. Do you sleep only on the grass mat? A sincere question. Yes, I'm sure. This is what you're referring to, this grass mat to my right, and yes, that is actually where I sleep. So, I'm not sitting there talking to you today, but you can see, I mean, I don't have to even get up. I mean, my bed is just there, it's on the floor. I don't have any bed clothes, so to speak, any blankets or sheets or mattresses or anything of this nature. I just use this robe to cover myself, wrap around myself, much like a sleeping bag, mainly to keep the mosquitoes and flies away. And this outer robe that's folded over there, I can use as a pillow where necessary. So, yes, that is where I sleep. Did Buddha really believe in rebirth, as you say? So Buddha didn't have to believe in rebirth. He was like us, reborn. But he had, through his powers of recollection that he attained through the practice and developed and established through many lifetimes of practice, was able to remember his previous lives. So there was no belief necessary. He doesn't expect us to believe either, or either to have the ability to remember our previous lives. But if that comes to us as a bonus, it's just that. It isn't an important part of the practice. If anything, it could be a distraction. What is the point that is made, and is understanding in right view, that we understand the causes and effects of all of our actions, of body, speech and mind, we refer to and call karma. And we may have a little problem here because the other cat, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. We might have to go and someone is sorting that out. Oh, and now the dog's coming. Rosie, come back in. So sorry about that distraction. Rosie. So she's become very territorial and possessive here, even though this isn't her actual home. It's over there somewhere. I'm not sure where, quite some way. They, I think, live in about a 300-metre area. All her hackles, are up. All of her fur on her spine is all up, sticking up, which is, I suppose, much like the feeling we have in our bodies when we get sort of, I don't know, excited or tense and we feel the hair standing up. It's this animalistic reaction. And these are things we learn not only through observation of other things, but through our own bodies. And part of our practice is that, contemplating whilst we're sitting in meditation, things like getting a numb leg, an aversion to that, pins and needles, things like also throughout our daily activities, when certain things happen, our physical reaction to events and of things we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and even things we think about. And also that those physical reactions usually have a corresponding mental emotion. So you cannot have one usually without the other. So when one has experiences of anxiety, which predominantly comes from the mind as a result of anticipation, negative anticipation of a future result, one may feel one is anxious. It has its corresponding physical reactions also, something around the centre of the body. And by bringing your attention to this, you can often dispel the mental emotion, knowing that it is just a physical reaction. And these all come from this animalistic reaction, this nature, built-in nature of ours, this Dharma, that we are hunters and we're protectors. This is our evolutionary biological nature. But that which knows that is not of that. And it is that that experiences rebirth. Now, I think there's a couple of questions coming on later about what is reborn. It is that that is reborn. And it is that that isn't the mind, the thinking brain, the intellectual mind, that is. It is the knowing aspect of this existence that is reborn, but has left within its previous existence all that information behind, and is starting, just like energy, if you like, with a blank sheet all over again, but will inherit and be the beneficiary of the either good or bad actions of body, speech and mind created in the previous life, or within this life that you are creating in this present moment, creating the causes and conditions for the next moment. We call this karma, the results we call vipaka, two separate things. So, although we had a distraction, I hope we've come back onto topic now and talked about the Buddha's teachings on rebirth, and covered a little bit about karma there, because karma and rebirth are very much interlinked and part of right view. So one concentrates on how things actually are to break the illusion that things are purely enjoyable and sufficient. Yes, I think you just have to know that nothing is just purely, it can be enjoyable and it can be sufficient for now. But I think I've already explained that all conditioned things, however enjoyable they are, or however unenjoyable they are, so the things we don't like, we have aversion to, some pain, that too is not permanent. It is unsatisfactory, yes, in a literal sense, but so are things that we enjoy if we don't get enough of them, or indeed we have too much of them. So too much cream buns and coffee will make you find the experience very unenjoyable. Not enough will also be unenjoyable. We have to have just the right amount, don't we? So this is the nature of all things, yes, and it's thinking about that. Don't have to concentrate too hard. We can just know that from our own experience, through our bodies, what we can see within these. The Buddha described it as you don't have to go seeking to the ends of the universe for all of the answers, seeing this teacher and that teacher, just simply to sit and within these fathom-length bags of skin bags of bones and horrible things, all of the answers can be found. Okay, let's have a look. Now, somebody's talking about this, I'm not sure, I don't know why. I realise that it's a question about the left and right side of the brain when meditating. I realise that it seems I'm only using the left side of my brain when in meditation. Even the breath seems to be on the left, and the lungs and the heart. Could you enlighten me on this, please? No, I don't think I can. I mean, I really don't know what side of my brain is doing what. I know there are tests, and the results of those tests can be looked at. This is rather overthinking with one side of the brain or another, because it's not necessary to know that. When I say looking into the body, I mean to things we can see, actually see. If you can see these things, feel these things, then that's maybe useful, but it could be a distraction to your meditation. But I certainly don't know if perhaps there was an incapacity in my lungs, maybe one part of them wasn't working, then you might notice that. But as to identify exactly what part, left or right, I don't think I can. This is why we have MRI scans, we have ultrasound scans, we have all of these scientific tests that the hospitals and doctors have to perform for us to know these things. Unless you're just sort of generalizing and saying that the right side is renowned for intellectual thought and the left side is for emotional thought. But these are just theories, really. I mean, they might be scientifically proven also. But when I refer to the brain, I'm referring to this thinking organ, this computer in its whole, as the not the mind. That which knows is neither internal or external, or it's not in any location you can identify. Where is it that knows you are happy? Where is it that knows you are sad? You cannot say it's. We think of ourselves as perhaps living in our heads, behind our eyes, don't we? Between our ears. But do we? If we're in love, it's all in our hearts, is it not? I'm not sure. But this is a commonly heard idea. But these aspects of mind are neither of those in any of those places. It's locationless. This is the nature of citta, which is that knowing aspect of it being attached to the body through its previous karma. It is attached because of its liking for the body and appreciation of the delights of the body. And in a way, it's similarly attached to what it doesn't like about the body through the gratification it gets when that body no longer feels that way. The relief. And until we break that link, we are the citta, the mind, that is attached to one form or another, but only as much as a driver is using a vehicle to get from A to B. When one can realize it isn't necessary to go from A to B, and you can just get out of the vehicle and stay put, then you're free from samsara, free from rebirth. I won't read the whole question, it's rather long. White lies. Is it karmically harmful to tell a white lie, or just will it affect your meditation? So all untruths, lying, is to varying degrees negative karma. So it's one of the 5 precepts, the 4th precept. So we have no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, or taking of intoxicants. Now, whether you're lying because you think it will please someone, and it's the answer that they need to hear, and you're calling it a white lie, or however you consider it from your own point of view, it's still not telling the truth. Ultimately, in order for the lie to continue, you will have to continue backing up that story. You can't change your mind later. You have to remember that you've lied. If it's the truth, you don't have to remember anything. So you refer to saying, answering the question, do I look fat in these pants, or something like that? I'm not quite sure I worded it like that. I might have said, does my bum look fat in this? But anyway, do I look fat in these pants? Very nice way of putting it. If you continue to, if you say it, yeah, no it doesn't, it looks fine. Now what if that person then goes out and then 3 people say, gosh, your bottom looks fat in those pants? How are you going to feel then? Because your lie has been exposed. Now this is, okay, morally perhaps you could say all a bit insignificant and not important, but little lies are that. They're little lies and they can grow. You may have to go rushing up to 3 people and say, oh, don't for heaven's sake mention what this person's looking like in this position, thus propagating the lie and continuing it into the future. Just don't do it. If you can avoid it, avoid it. Use clever speech, or just not that clever. Just be wise with what you talk about, and avoid where you can unnecessary talk that may mean you have to tell these so-called white lies. A lie is a lie and that's it. Don't do it. You refer to my saying it will affect your meditation. Well, yes, any of the sila, if broken, will affect your meditation, because we require a firm foundation of sila in order to be able to develop samadhi and jhana. If we are corrupt in any of the aspects of our moral virtue, our sila, this will bring into this present moment continually concerns about the past. Because you will, with those lies, for example, have to maintain those lies into the future, thus corrupting the present moment. If you're always moral and not lying, then this is not an issue. Very often the comments, or the longer questions and comments, are trying to justify doing something. Why? I mean, I'm not persuading everybody to keep the 5 precepts. I'm suggesting if you do, you'll feel a lot better. So it's not necessary to then try and convince me that, but it's okay to smoke marijuana or to have 1 glass of wine. It's okay to tell a white lie. You know, if you take the odd paperclip from work, that's not going to affect your meditation. And then especially what you don't need to be doing is expanding upon that for all of the experience you have and necessities for doing those things. It's very nice and simply done, on put, that we just don't kill, steal, sexual misconduct, lie, or take intoxicants if we want to succeed in this practice. And I've tried the other way, it doesn't work. And there's no convincing the people whom are experiencing, seeing the truth of the Dharma by trying to convince them otherwise for what are really just excuses to carry on doing something. Because it's a little bit difficult not to do that. It's often the easier option, but long term it isn't. Is self and ego the labels we put upon ourselves? So I think I talked about this just recently, so I'll just briefly go over it again. But self and ego are slightly different. Ego is often what we describe this person, this individual, this persona, as in a positive way, or think of with a form of positive conceit. Whereas self can be more Buddhist conceit considers both thinking you are better than others as conceit, thinking you are worse than others also as conceit, but also thinking you are the same as others as conceit. Whereas the popular conception of conceit is like the idea of ego, which is you are better than others. Egotistical generally is thought of you think you are better than others. It doesn't usually refer to someone who thinks they're worse than others. Whereas Buddhist conceit is you are worse than others, can be also considered as conceit, because it's applying to the idea of self. So they're not necessarily, I don't know why you say or think they might be labels. They're just words, aren't they? And if you want to use a word to describe something, it's a way of describing something. The self in itself is not a thing. In the other aspect or part of the three characteristics of existence, anatta, is that not self. There is no self. It is a body made up of those elements I was describing earlier. That's the physical body. Now the physical body has feelings, actual physical feelings, and then you have the thinking brain, which perceives and conceptualizes these physical feelings with ideas brought largely about by memory as to whether they are positive or negative, whether you like them or dislike them, whether it's pleasure or pain. And then from that arises liking and disliking. And this is what forms really this overall existence physically. And that which knows that is not the consciousness within the thinking brain of all that's going on, but that which knows also that consciousness. So all those we describe as the five aggregates or the khandhas that make up this existence are the self. But it is not what you are. What you are is what knows that self. It isn't that will be reborn. That will be just back to its elements after death, whether buried or burnt, whether left to rot by the roadside or whatever. It will become, as they say, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It will become earth, water, wind, fire. It will become dust. It will become air, temperature, and mix with everything else. So that's what we're talking about there. You attend a monastery. So I attend a monastery where nearly all of the lay community are of different nationality and speak to each other in their own languages, even though the majority speak English. Oh yeah, even though the majority can speak English. I know words and situations are impermanent. I just feel quite like something that, like sometimes I'm intruding. So you're speaking there of within a monastery, which must be quite a large monastery. There are groups of nationalities all getting together, talking in their own little groups and enclaves in their own languages. Chitta chatta, we call sampapalapa, a Pali word for it, a lovely Pali word, meaning just idle chit-chat. And this shouldn't really be happening in a monastery, however big, however small. Monasteries are discouraged from hanging around in groups of any kind. You should be practicing alone. So don't feel like you're intruding, because you're going to the monastery to practice. If others choose to go off with their country folk, mates, and chitter-chatter in their language, you don't want to be a part of that anyway. That's not why you're there. Even if they're talking to the Dharma with each other, it's not necessarily the appropriate time to be doing so. You're going there to practice, so where there's the formal offering of a Dharma talk in your language, or English if it's the language you understand and is commonly used there, that is the appropriate time to listen to the Dharma. And only to ask questions and speak when you're invited to do so. So this then is what we look to achieve in any monastery environment, or even myself here alone, is noble silence. And that is talking only when necessary about practical aspects of life we have to, by way of convention, discuss with one another. But other than that, there's no need to speak. We don't need to talk about the weather, politics, football results, any of these things, none of which we're interested in anyway. We don't have to make idle chit-chatter to seem polite. So you may feel if you were to come here or go to a similar monastery where there is just a few people and they were practicing noble silence, you may still feel like you're intruding because no one is speaking to you. But for a different reason, no one is speaking at all. But see your practice as yours, and don't look to others and their practice as being part of your own. We only can look after our own practice and then set the example for others to follow. The practice starts with ourselves, or that word I'm using by way of convention. Of course, there is no self, but we, as in this current lifetime, can only practice for our own benefit, but it will become the benefit of others when we are practicing well, because they will see the example we're setting. So don't worry about you intruding. If you're allowed to go there, which most monasteries are welcoming most people, then just see that as their problem. Maybe they don't get the opportunity to ever get together with their friends in any other safe, comfortable environment. And as long as it's not disturbing you, then let it be. If it's disturbing you, move to another part of the monastery, somewhere else where it's a little bit more peaceful. But don't worry that you're missing out on anything. It's they that are missing out. They're missing out on the opportunity to practice. Would Buddha be mad if you put mosquito nets on the windows and door? So they're not really needed. I use a mosquito repellent coil. These are relatively inexpensive here, and your donations go towards funding their purchase. So that's enough. I've done that for many years now. Mosquito nets in the Vinaya, so the rules for Buddhists and monks, are allowable. So it's referred to usually that this robe is to ward off flies and biting insects like mosquitoes. In one of the chants reflecting on the use of our requisites, this is one of the uses of these robes. So I'll wrap it around me at night so that I don't wake up completely covered in mosquito bites. But other than that, they're flying on me, they're landing on me right now. Also those other normal flies. Now, I do have a mosquito net. I haven't even taken it out of the packet. It was offered to me kindly by some generous upasakas, Buddhist lay people. But I've never had cause to use it. But if I wanted to zip myself up in such a thing, I could. And people do go to large lengths to exclude them from a building, but they're tiny little things. They'll get in through all the gaps regardless. It seems to be a waste of time. And I like to have this open so all beings can wander in and wander out. And then naturally, actually, the little, what are they called, lizard things that walk around the ceilings and the top of the walls here, they're walking around the tops of the walls to keep away from the cat, because she can only get up so far. And the mosquitoes are kept out because they're up there. So nature, just within these open environments, takes care of itself. And I consider I am the intruder, not the mosquitoes, not the lizards, not the cats, which are feral cats. They're not wild, but they're not really. They don't all live in one house. They go from place to place. But I've had these big monitor lizards which can give you a very nasty bite, which isn't poisonous, but it's very painful and can become very infected. They've come wandering in here of late. Poisonous, yes, poisonous. Very large snakes have come in here. Now I just get out of their way and hope they go quickly, or even gently persuade them with a soft broom to leave. But as soon as they know you're aware of them, they'll usually run out the door. I never, for instance, have time to get the phone and take a picture of them here. They're far too fast moving for that. I'm living in nature. I don't worry about such things. Mosquitoes are nowhere near as distracting as our minds internally can be. But I'm sure the Buddha would have used all necessary things to keep the body healthy. I don't worry too much about the health consequences, dengue and malaria. I've just been fortunate in that sense, I suppose. It's been now getting on 10 years since I've been travelling in these parts, doing exactly this, and you know, so far it's been good enough the way it is. I haven't had to acquire things. When I leave here, if I leave here, I hope I don't ever or have to, other than when I'm dead. But I'll take nothing with me, and that's how I arrived, with nothing, just my basic 8 requisites, which are my 3 robes: lower robe, upper robe, outer robe, my bowl, my razor, belt, water filter, and needle and cotton. That's 2 things, but it's considered a sewing kit. So they're the 8 things that we take with us and travel with. They're all we own in the world. I don't own anything. These phones you own. You offered kind donations to enable me to keep making these videos. And I think this is now, we're on the 2nd bits of equipment since when we began this a couple of years ago. They're relatively or very inexpensive pieces of equipment that I use here. I have to use 2 so that I can read your comments and film at the same time, but I don't use them for any other purpose really than this. And when I go, if they can fit in my bowl, my pindapata, my alms bowl that we have to have with us at all times, then everything I own fits in there. So, is there anywhere in the sutras we can find that references specifically forbidding the use of portions of medical plants like cannabis? So this is a way of wording the use of the medical ingredient of cannabis. And to my knowledge, there's nothing specific like that in the sutras. You're referencing in one of the training rules, as in Vairamani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami, precepts Suramaya Majja Pammatatana Vairamani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami, which is often translated as fermented drinks, as alcohol only. It doesn't really, I think majja means intoxicant, not specifically alcohol. But the 5th precept is intoxicants, it's simply that. So I'm sure if you look at enough different translations and you look at the 84,000 different suttas, the Vinaya Pitaka and the Abhidharma, you'll be able to find in there some way that you can interpret the Buddha's teachings as to not specifically excluding the use of the medical content of marijuana. You could probably even say it's okay to spliff up and smoke a joint if you want to. It's up to you, okay? I'm not saying that anybody should do anything. I'm just telling you how it works and how it doesn't work. If you use intoxicants and they're just that, it doesn't work. If you refrain from intoxicants, it does work. The practice works if you keep the 5 precepts. It's as simple as that. And we've discussed this between this writer and myself already, and they have very good and justified reasons for their medical use of marijuana, but, and I say but, I also have my reservations with regards to the use of any intoxicants where the intoxicating element can be removed. And that's really the end of the discussion that and that's where we've left it. But like I was saying earlier, we do try I did myself the first, try to find ways around these things to, like the eating in the afternoon. We only can eat 4 things. Chatu madhu, 4 honeys, which are honey, 1 being, jaggery, sugar, ghee, which is clarified butter, and oil. Well, neither of those things are very nice in their own right. Maybe honey, yeah. And even mixed up together. And some places in India, they do mix those 4 things up together as something, being the 4 allowables. And that, in a certain consistency, is, I think they have to put some little bit of flour in there to bind it together, or some allowable. But again, they're finding a way around these allowables to make it a nice snack. So in the West, people can eat cheese because it's relatively accessible, because they say, well, it's ghee, it's butter, it's clarified butter. Well, it's not really. It's got all the nutritional contents and loveliness. Cheese is very lovely. It's a meal in itself, isn't it? I'd love to sit down to a plate of cheese. If it wasn't for the fact that I don't eat dairy products really anymore, mainly for practical reasons, they're not very available in these parts, other than in the form of curd, which I don't really like, and needs to be kept cold, and you can't keep things like that cold very easily. So yeah, we find all these reasons. So people eat chocolate, they say, well, it's black chocolate, it's got no milk in it, so therefore it's... Now chocolate actually comes into a different realm of these allowables. The allowables being these 4 medicines: honey, clarified butter, sugar or jaggery, so raw sugar, and oil. But then in addition to that, we're allowed medicinal tonics. So my medicinal tonic is like soda. So sweet drinks, soda drinks, which I like to have cold because I find them refreshing in the afternoon. If there's a fridge available, they've made a fridge available to me here, so I can have a cold, even Pepsi Cola or something like that. And there'll be all these real ardent spiritualist people saying, oh, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, he mentioned those evil words. Well, it's just sugar and water, isn't it? It's sweet, a sweet, citric, sugary drink of any form is sufficient. If it's got a bit of caffeine in there to give you a boost, like a cup of tea with some sugar, which is allowable, but these are considered tonics, as opposed to medicines. They're to boost our ability to practice. But then to take it to another degree, when you're sick, you can use certain bean curds. And that has been construed in modern society to be black chocolate, because it's made of the cocoa bean, I think. And that has some caffeine and some medicinal qualities. So for various reasons, it's, these rules are there to help our practice, not to ruin our lives or make us heroes or macho in any particular way. I've just found it much simpler and easy, and really easier, really for practical reasons, to just go with them quite literally in their literal sense. Because chocolate here, unless it's offered to me when you're going to eat it in the afternoon, black chocolate, well, you can't get it here, full stop. They've only got milk chocolate, which we're not allowed in the afternoon. And it doesn't last in these hot countries, because even if you can put it in a fridge where you are, it's got to get to you through these very hot conditions. So by the time you have chocolate, it never looks like chocolate that hasn't melted and then gone solid again. On that note, I should just answer this last question as it's staring right in front of me. What made you change from Christian to Buddhism? So from Christianity to Buddhism, or from a Christian to a Buddhist? Well, I was never really a proper Christian. I did later on in life get christened and study deeply Christianity, as in the New Testament, so the teachings of the Buddha. And I believe in Christ. I don't believe in Christ, I just accept he was a rather good teacher of his time, what he was trying to do. And his teachings were, in my opinion, back then, good enough for me, and thought would be worth delving into. So I took it as far as even christening and taking it a lot further. or becoming christened, so officially Christian technically. We're born really into Christianity. We have Christian names. We're in a Christian, officially, country, because I'm from the UK, England, and we have the Church of England. And in that respect, although I was brought up in a Catholic church, I thought, well, I didn't think much of that for various reasons, so I chose to adopt the Christian ideas of the Church of England. However, I didn't truly believe in God, and nothing through all of my studying and research of the Bible, and then even going to college I was looking towards really ordaining even as a priest, as a Christian, not monk, but trying to think of a commonly known word, but priest, vicar, we use the word in the UK. I was looking at going into the church, let's put it that way. But I couldn't ever really wholeheartedly, truly believe in one God, one creator of this universe and all that's within it. So I stopped pretending and thought, well, there's something else to this life than believing blindly what others tell you. And there must be a way of finding out for yourself what life is all about and what its purpose is. So I then, through a long drawn out story, which I've gone into some lengths previously, so look back through the videos, through meditation, came to Buddhism and found that we can actually experience what needs to be experienced for ourselves within this lifetime. And if indeed, as it does, that requires us to maintain a certain level of moral virtue, then if we've got it very wrong, because I'm not discounting the existence of a god or gods. In fact, Buddhism has very many realms, heavenly realms, very many hell realms, and very many gods. There's just not one heaven, one hell, and one god of a permanent nature in Buddhism. But it doesn't discount the idea of those, particularly. So without discounting the idea of Christianity and its belief in God and Christians' faith, I can practice within the parameters of moral virtue, knowing and having confidence, trusting and having faith that at the end of this life, having done as little harm as possible, either to myself or to any other beings, then whatever happens next will be positive rather than negative. I absolutely certainly do not believe that if you do not accept the word of God as is written in the Bible, which is written by large religious institutions and governments and all sorts, as to being absolutely it, that you will be banished to sort of hell-like realms for eternity. I do not believe in that. I can say that. As long as you're keeping moral precepts, so not killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying or taking intoxicants, and just those, doing no harm, then you're only doing good. And I don't think even if there is one and only one God, he's going to punish you for that. And on that note, I should leave it, and until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.